Hello, welcome back. Hope you're all enjoying this. So the last time we routed the edges with the small Roman Ogie bit, and then I explained about mixing the paints and stuff and adding sparkles to the paint. And I just want to make a correction because when we were mixing everything up, I was using measuring spoons, but when I was measuring it, I ended up saying put in a quarter cup, but it's not. It's a quarter teaspoon of the silver and the light blue sparkles. And that was when I mixed the light blue and the white paint for the weapons parts of the sign. So I apologize for that. So you seen how we done that, put the stain in the handles, and now to get the depth of the colors that I wanted, because this is a craft paint, it's not a house paint and it's not so thick, it actually took 5 coats of the green and 5 coats of the blue to get what I wanted. The depth of the color. And anyone working with paint knows that dark colors are harder to work with than light colors. So that's why sometimes it'll take more coats to get the actual depth of color that you want. So after I got everything painted, I went ahead and done me sanding, because like I said in the last episode, when you're painting, you're going to get paint out over this. But with that shellac we had on it, that helped protect the wood a little bit, and it was easier to get everything sanded out. Now I did sand it all off with the finish sander and with the 220 grit sandpaper. And once I got that done, sanded all down and cleaned up. Now if you got access to some tack cloths or something like that, you can use tack cloths instead of using ear and stuff like I've been using. You see me watching me using the blow gun to blow all the dust and everything off. But sometimes that don't get it all, so it's nice to have a tack cloth, or you can even use a rag just to wipe it off to make sure. And you can even dampen the rag a little bit, not wet, but just a little damp, just enough to go over it so that any dust left over from sanding will stick to the rag and you get a nice clean surface before you start adding clear coats. Now I went ahead and added, I already added 2 coats of clear coat. I never done no water sanding yet between it, because I wanted to leave that to show you how it's done. You can use a 320 grit sandpaper or higher, just regular sandpaper with a sanding block, which is you can do, but you got to be careful because you don't want to go right through the clear coat. Now if this area here was sanded, and if I was using regular sandpaper, there's a chance that if you happen to go through the clear coat, you'd hit the stain, and then you got a big repair to do, or patch up to do. So for water sanding, I like to do that because that's what I'm used to doing for furniture pieces that I've built, mantles and even handrails and stuff like that. Real fine woodworking to get a real nice smooth finish. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to demonstrate the water sanding. So again, it's a 2000 grit, P2000 grit water paper, and you can tell the difference of water paper because of the backing for one thing, and it's also marked waterproof. So that's the kind of sandpaper you use. I got a little rubber sanding block. That's what I use. Now you want to let that soak in water for about 5 or 10 minutes before you start using it, just so that the water gets into the grit of the sandpaper. And then I always just like to take a little sprinkle of water. You don't need very much because your water paper is going to be wet anyway. And then you just, in a circular motion, go over your project. Now you'll feel it go from the sandpaper sticking to your work to sliding right over your work. And when you feel it sliding over your work, you know that you got the air bubbles out, because that's what you're doing. You're knocking down the air bubbles. In the last episode I explained that when clear coat's dry, as it dry, air bubbles forms in it. Now, instead of spraying, you could do this with a brush, with your clear coat, but I like to spray because it gives you a way better finish, and I'm that used to spraying now that's what I prefer to do. Now, if you do use a brush, just be careful, because what you got to do is make sure that as you're going across the workpiece with the clear coat, you don't get too much buildup down in your letters. So it takes a little bit more time to do it with a brush. But by spraying it, you get an even coat everywhere. Now, as you see, again, even though there's clear coat on this, I'm still going with the grain. But I'm doing it in a circular motion this time. Just a little rough where that knot is at. Now you want to hit the edges too. It don't take a lot to do. You'll feel it right away, pretty much instant. And then you just rub your hand over it and you'll feel how smooth it is when you go to do it. And I always wait till after the second coat before I do any water sanding. I don't sand from the first coat, because the first coat pretty much disappears into your work. You don't even notice it on there. So I always wait till the second coat. You want to use a clean rag for this to get the water off, because you don't want no dirt or nothing getting because now you're getting ready to do the couple of final coats. You don't want nothing getting in your getting on your workpiece. Now you got to make sure you get all the water out of these letters too, because it'll affect the drying of the clear coat. Now the clear coat that I'm using, it's a water based, and it's a gloss finish. Depending on what type of finish you want on your project, you can use semi-gloss or you can use satin. Sometimes, depending on the project, like furniture or a nice, cabinet or mantle, fireplace mantles, stuff like that, you just use a satin finish. Same way on cabinets. When I do cabinets, it's a satin finish. But for projects like this, where you want it to, you want everything to get right brilliant and shiny, I use a gloss finish. Now you're going to see, like when you're doing this with the water paper, you usually see a white milky residue, and that's what you're trying to get wiped off. especially down in the lettering, because when you're sanding it just falls down, it just rolls down in the lettering. And you got to make sure it's right dry. Now when you're spraying, it usually takes 20 minutes to a half hour for each coat to dry. But if you're putting it on with a brush, it's going on thicker, and it'll take maybe 40 to 60 minutes for it to dry before you can ready for the water sand and apply another coat. Make sure your hands are clean too, because you're going to be putting your hands on your workpiece. But you want to try to avoid touching it as much as you can, because at the end of the day, your fingers got oil in it. Your fingers got oily film, and you don't want that to interfere with your workpiece. Now I'm just going to use my blow gun and just make sure. This will help dry it off a bit too. Have that part done. I'll move that over here. So now we're going to get ready and spray. As I said, I already got 2 coats on there. Now it's water sanded. Now we're going to get ready to spray the last few coats. Now I got it's a HVLP gun. This is basically an automotive touch-up gun, and HVLP is high volume, low pressure. Now the high volume is your liquid, how much comes out, and the low pressure is you don't have to use a lot of high pressure. So I'm working on, I got a small regulator on here, my compressor got a water separator and everything on it. This I'm working with on this regulator between 25 and 30 psi, but then I got another setting right here that also cuts down on the pressure. Depending on the liquid that you're using, it's going to depend how much air you need. Now with these guns, your liquid can't be too thick, because it just won't spray right. So with this clear coat here that I'm using, it's already pre-mixed with water, and that's one good thing about the water base, you can mix it with water, and it's basically a 5-to-1 ratio, so 5 parts clear coat and 1 part water. And I find that gives it nice for spraying. Now again, this is another air reducer here, or increase or reduce air pressure. This one here is the volume of liquid, and this one here is for my fan pattern. Now I already got the gun all set up ready to go. So what we're going to do, we're going to connect it to our ear, and every time so it's down. The regulator is going to show, when it's hooked on, is going to show more than your 30 psi. But once you pull the trigger, the needle will drop. And that first burst, when you're spraying, that's why you never have the gun facing your work first, because that first burst will give you a splatter or an overbuild up of residue. You always start away from your piece first, then you move in. Now, when you're spraying with these guns, automotive guns, because you can't get spray guns, you got to buy the automotive guns. You go on a 45-degree angle like this, and you start from the end of your piece, pass it, pull the trigger, and then you go and lay your material down on a 45-degree angle. And you always pass your piece. You make sure you always pass over. That way then you don't get no extra buildup anywhere. So we're going to get ready for that. I'm going to move some of this out of the way, because with my pass over, with going past the material. Now, another good thing about this gun is you do get a little bit of, you still gets a little bit of overspray, because at the end of the day you are still using air, so you're going to get overspray no matter what. Now, when you're spraying, obviously I don't have no big fancy spray booth, but because it's only a small project, but I got a I got a big fan. I'll be opening up the door and turning on the big fan, so you will hear a bit of noise and while we're spraying. And I got to open up the door too, so that the fan will draw the overspray out. And it's always nice to wear a mask, and that way then you don't want, because you don't want to, still don't want to be breathing it in. So I'm going to open up the door and I'll turn on the fan, and hopefully you'll still be able to hear me when the fan is on. Okay. And that's basically how it's done. Now I gotta wait for that to dry. I'll just give it another little touch of the water paper. Sorry about that. So that's how that's done. I'm just gonna wait for that to dry. I'm gonna hit it again, just a very light water sanding, and then give it a final coat, and then our project is done. So here we have it. Hunter's Room Minecraft. So I hope you enjoyed these segments on router work, how to make a sign with a router, and then the painting of it and clear coating of it. And thank you very much. Subscribe, like, share, leave me a comment. Someone might pick up on a mistake I made. Don't be afraid to leave a comment, and I'll try to get it rectified, and I will either answer back in a comment, or in another episode I'll explain the mistake I made and correct it. So thank you, everybody. I enjoyed doing this project. I hope Sarah and her grandson enjoys it, and I got some more projects coming up. I just don't know which one I'm going to be doing first. So I'll be coming on with some more different stuff to do. Thank you, and have a good day, and stay safe, everybody. Bye.